Hello everybody, Brad the Guitologist here. In today's video we're going to take a look at a Silverface Twin Reverb. This one has been heavily modified according to my customer, to whom it belongs. I think this is a late 70s one, 78, 79, somewhere along in there maybe. This one does have the Made in USA Fender logo, which came later on in the run of these. So yeah. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, please stick around. First thing we really notice about this Twin is that it has a master volume, which is one of the things that sets apart some of the later Silverfaces from the blackface variety, for instance. They added that master volume so you know the player can get tone, and then you can adjust the master later on. A lot of people kind of you know, look down and thumb their noses at these master volume amps, but to be honest, I'm not really 100% sure why, because any I've ever had with the master volume, it just gives you that much more flexibility. I've never had a problem with the master volume causing any kind of tone sucking or anything like that. I mean, I think it's just nonsense, ludicrous hype aimed at, you know, sort of, I don't know, sort of making the black faces seem maybe better or more removed from these than they actually were. Now there are some other changes that were made that, yes, you know, maybe do affect the tone, and maybe that's what some players are referring to when they're, you know, they're talking down on the master volume. But I've never had a problem with the master volume, and in fact, if you don't like the master volume, just crank the son of a bitch all the way to 10 and shut up about it, because essentially that's all it is. It's just a pot. It's just a resistor. So crank it all the way to 10 and you have almost no resistance, so negligible that you will not and cannot notice it. All right, here we are with this thing out on the bench, this Super Reverb, and we can see someone has been in here and done quite a lot of work, actually, it looks like already. Most of these coupling caps, signal caps in this first part of the amp, all those yellow caps have all been replaced. This bypass, well, both these bypass caps right in here are replacements. Moving along, it looks like they either jizzed or snotted on this thing. That's what it looks like, but they've taken silicone and it looks like maybe they were trying to stamp down some microphonics in here. I can't imagine that would be necessary, really, with a properly running amp, you know, with good tubes, that you would have to do that to stamp down microphonics. But I don't know, whatever it is they were trying to do, they sure made it look like a mess. A couple of replaced components there, obviously. Those blue components, one of those looks like a bypass capacitor for this tube. The tube next to it has a new bypass capacitor down in there as well. Let's see what else. Moving right along, we have a few more new components over here, a couple new capacitors. Looks like a couple of new resistors right there. Another new bypass capacitor there. So, you know, a lot of work's been done. That capacitor right there is a new one, and looks like it might be, it's definitely in the power section, but I'm not sure why they would have a 22 microfarad capacitor up here on top like that at 500 volts. We do have one replaced resistor there, but the rest of these have been left, and that should be a screen resistor. I think it would probably be wise to just go ahead and replace all these screen resistors with like 2-watt metal film. There's some kind of marking over here, looks like 1984, August of 1984, and then someone's initials perhaps. So maybe that was someone who worked on it in the past. Let's flip this thing over and check under the doghouse. I'm suspecting there's got to be new caps. If we have this much new stuff on top, surely, you know, surely all that's new. But we'll look at the capacitors and see what the transformers and everything look like. Alright, here we are on the tube side of the chassis, and we will take a look first at what kind of tubes we have in here. On the power section we have a quad of Ruby tubes, and these are labeled 6L6 GCM-STR. These should be just your typical Chinese Ruby tubes, but you know what, I've always had pretty good luck with Rubies, man. You know, that's just me personally. I've never had a complaint with those. I'm not sure who made these or where they're made. They're probably Chinese. Let's take a look at the preamp tubes. They might all be Rubies too. Yeah, that's a Softtech. And if that's a Softtech, I would venture a guess that the rest of these are going to be Softtech. Yep. Nope, that's a JJ. That's a Groove tube. AT. That's a Softtech. That's another Groove tube. And that's a Groove tube AT. So mix of Groove tube, Softtech, and a single JJ in this second position. Let's get all these back on and let's look under the doghouse. Alright, under the doghouse, they pretty much decked this thing out with Ruby, not just with the tubes, but also with capacitors. These match the Ruby capacitor that was put up top. One pet peeve of mine is turning the values around like that. I've never liked that. Just on sheer principle, I may desolder that and turn it around. I hate that. And you know, they're also pretty squonky in here. They're not really well lined up and stuff. I mean, you know, that's getting really nitpicky, I know. And I'm not even really that nitpicky when it comes to this kind of stuff, but on stuff like that, it's just so easy to do. You know, I guess it's easier to be nitpicky when it's that easy to do. A couple of new resistors as well. I mean, so this is like more or less somebody went through this really with a fine-tooth comb, and I don't know what could have gone wrong. And at the moment, without looking at my notes and stuff and consulting the conversation that I had with the owner, I'm not even sure if I recall what the complaint was with this thing. I just intended on you know, dialing up slowly and finding out for myself. But I'll go back over the notes and we'll try to figure that out, what was going on with it. We see here a 606. That's typical of what you see for the manufacturer. 1978, second week on that little choke. Over here on this we have that's an original part, also 1978, third week. And on the power transformer we have 1977, 39th week. That's around the time I was born right there. So all original iron in this thing. We've got extensive work already done, extensively new as far as the tubes, capacitors, all that sort of thing. So, you know, it kind of narrows it down to what it could be, or this could be one of those cases where you have a bad new component and then it becomes even a little more difficult sometimes. Let's also check this while we're here and make sure it's the correct value. Nope. If I can get it out. There we go. It's supposed to be a 4 amp slow blow, and it is a 4 amp right there. Okay, so we're good there. I just like to always check that. You guys know that whenever I get one in, because you know the first thing that's going to end up happening, the first time I don't check one, what's going to end up happening is I'm going to dial it up on the variac. Oh yeah, this is great, everything's working fine. I'm going to call the customer and tell him that, you know, I don't even have to do anything to this, and then it's just 2 seconds later it's going to smoke a transformer, and I'll have to buy the customer a new transformer. So that's why I always try to do that, and I do it with my own amps too. So but okay, I guess from here what we'll do, we will plug this thing in and dial it up on the variac and see and plug it into a load and just see what's going on with it. Well, I was back in this cabinet looking for a tube chart, and I think the tube chart's been ripped out or something, because I don't see one present. But there's actually something here I don't think I've ever noticed before on a Fender. Here's a little Fender tag with, see, A83 083. I wonder if that matches what's on the chassis. And yes, indeedy do, it does. It matches exactly what's on the chassis. Same number. So that's interesting. Little tag under there. I guess that's one way, if you wanted to authenticate that your Fender has matching numbers, you can take the chassis out and check underneath there and see if your cabinet has that little sticker, which of course that would be something easy to fall out too, so that wouldn't really mean much. Just a few things also that sort of corroborate the 1978 date on this thing. This one includes a hum balance pot, as Fenders, some Fenders did in the late 70s. This one also includes a recording line output. It also includes the 135 watt version with the Ultralinear transformers, meaning they're basically squeezing every bit of power out of these tubes that they possibly can, and it's going to run closer to like a hi-fi sort of a setup. There's also a push-pull boost on the other side on the master volume, and there's a master volume. So those features corroborate the 1978 date on this. Okay, dialing this thing up on the variac. It's been all the way up and kind of been burning in here for a few minutes, and I've got 61.5 negative volts on the bias, which is what I'm just kind of checking first. And if we look here on the schematic for the bias, about 62 volts, so that's dead on before that resistor, and then after that 2.2K you should have about negative 58 volts. So that's dead on, and this thing is dead quiet. And I've actually pressed on a couple of the inputs, and it's, you know, I mean, everything sounds clean, and I think it's running about as well as you can ask for one of these so far, from what I can tell. But I'm going to go through and take some voltage measurements and everything, and just make sure I'm not the crazy one here. But it's looking to me like this thing is in pretty good shape, at least preliminarily. Now, I mean, you know, that's not saying very much, but you know, that's half the battle. Okay, according to the schematic, also the highest voltage that we should see in this amp is right on the standby switch, and we should be getting about 500 volts with the standby on and about 520 volts with the standby off. Right now we're getting about 500 volts off that standby switch. If I switch it to the other position, okay, that's the wrong side of it, obviously. So let's check the other side of the switch. Oop. Well, this thing had been on for a little while. Yeah, about 520 volts. So, I mean, this thing is just dead on the voltages. Just like clockwork, really. Alright, this turned out to be one of those rare situations where a customer brought me something, you know, saying there might be issues with it and wanted me to check it over, and I literally can't find a single issue with this thing. I mean, you know, I could get nitpicky and try to do something a little different with that cap, maybe, little things like that, but, you know, I could probably come in here and try to clean that jizz out of there, but I don't think it's going to make it sound any better. You know, little things like that I could probably do, you know, check the bias and stuff for him while I've got it open. But this is a rare situation, you know, where if I get into this, it's just going to end up costing him more money, and it's not going to really increase the reliability very much. So what we're going to do, we're going to button it back up, send it back home with him. He's using a Fender Rhodes through this thing anyway, so and you know, I only have a guitar to test it with, so I really can't test some of the lower frequencies. I guess I could plug a bass into it, but I've been playing around on this thing for a while now, and I can't find a single problem. So we're gonna button it up, give it a test for good measure, and send it back with him probably. Something now. Hear that right there. Hear that? I'm just touching a power tube right there. Listen to that. It definitely wasn't doing that last night. Sounds like a freaking monkey or something. Let's spray these sockets and pop in another quad of power tubes. We might have a problem with power tubes. Alright, this is the tube that was squealing whenever I would tap on it. And I've replaced it with just a single tube for the moment. See if we can't make that go away. There's a lot of crackling on that. Listen to that. That's strange. That's a really microphonic set of output tubes. I think that's what that is. Listen to the difference. Hear the kind of rattle in there? That's me putting my hand on one of the other power tubes to make that stop. Yeah, that's what can happen sometimes. You know, you'll play an amp out on the bench, and because it's separated from the speakers and not inside the cab, you're divorcing the head from all the rattles and the natural, you know, harmonics and things that happen, and you know, all the resonant frequencies of all of these materials inside of all the components in your chassis. And when you do that, you're not really getting a clear picture of what's going on when these two pieces are together. So putting them back together and doing the test, that's another good example of why that's kind of important to do before you send something along. I've had that problem before and learned my lesson. That's why I try to do all these demos before I send something back, just to make sure, you know, to myself even, that everything is okay to go. But yeah, man, this is one of those things where I'm going to have to probably order a quad of tubes, because this for sure is microphonic. Let's just listen to it. You hear all the trash? It just sounds real trashy in there. All those components are just kind of rattling against one another and everything, and it just sounds real trashy. And whenever you hit a note, I mean, that's exactly what's happening. So, yeah, so we need some new power tubes. Okay, the thing that sort of makes this this version of the Twin Ultralinear are these taps coming off the primary of this output transformer. We have a brown-yellow wire feeding these screens through these 470 ohm resistors, and up here we have a blue-yellow wire feeding the other two screens. That's kind of the key component in the Ultralinear operation on these amps, at least to my understanding. Again, I'm not an expert on these, and I'm not an expert on Ultralinear either, but that's my understanding of it. And in this example, previous tech has obviously clipped these out and tied them off. So the Ultralinear operation is no longer there. We are going to go ahead and change these screen resistors. They've already changed one of them to what looks like a 2-watt metal film. We're going to change all the rest of those to metal film 2-watt resistors, so they'll last a lot longer, be a lot less prone to failure. Again, the rest of this amp looks like it was pretty well done. There's a couple other things I'm a bit unsure about. This lead has been clipped here, and the other end of the lead has also been clipped. I'm not 100% sure where that would have gone. Probably right there, I'm guessing. But both ends have been clipped, and I'm going to try to figure out what that was and where that went. But at any rate, we are definitely going to change those resistors. Alright, next thing we're going to do, we're going to bias these output tubes, or at least check the bias on these output tubes. We do have an output tubes matching potentiometer, which we're going to keep in mind. In order to do this, we're going to do the output transformer method. So we're going to measure from the center tap to each side of the output transformer first. So we're going to come off the standby switch, actually, because that is the center tap for the primary, and we will go to pins 3 on one side and then pins 3 on the other side to measure each side of the output transformer and write those numbers down. Measuring this first set, we're getting 37.8 ohms, so we'll write that down. Alright, and the right pair of tubes over here are measuring 36 on that output transformer, 36 ohms. Alright, next thing we want to do with the amp on and warmed up, we're going to measure in the same places. We're going to measure the voltage drop this time across each half of the output transformer. In order to do that, we have to take it off a standby. And we'll let this settle down for a second here. It looks like it's going to settle around 2.46 on that side. So that's the right side, 2.46, and the left pair voltage drop 2.59, so 2.46 and 2.59. Alright, and now what we want to do is measure the plate voltages on each pair. So this is the left pair. Plate voltage over here is 497 volts. And for good measure we can check the other one. It should be about the same though. 497 volts. If I can get it on there. Yep, 497 volts, so those are going to be the same. We can leave our grounds right there on the chassis because all of the cathodes are at the same potential. Here's the right side. It's at 497 volts also. So pretty well matched on the voltages. So let's write that down, do some calculation. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to divide the voltage drop. So in the top case there, or in the case of the left-hand pair, 2.59 volts divided by 37.8. That'll give us our current. And we want to multiply this by 497 volts. That'll give us our total for the pair, so we divide by 2. And that's 17 watts of plate dissipation per tube on that left side. Let's do the other side and just see get a sense of where it is. So 17, let's say 2.46 divided by 36 times 497. $33.9. These are very close. Divided by 2. Yeah, they're pretty much dead on. As far as the they're dead on as far as the matching of the tubes. So that's a little bit lower, I think. Let me see. Maximum plate dissipation for a 606 is 30 watts. So times 0.7. About 21 watts would be 70%. We're at 17 watts, so it's a little bit on the cold side. It's not that far on the cold side, and to be honest, this is probably going to spare the tubes. We could come over here, and I believe that resistor right there is the one we would want to change, and it's already been changed. You can see the old one, the original one, hanging loose there. If I was a betting man, I'd say we could probably hook that right there up, that resistor, and it would probably be just about close to the 21 watts. We may experiment with that here just to see. Let's go ahead and do that. Alright, we swapped those resistors out to what I believe to be the original value right there. That's on the back of that the tube matching potentiometer. Alright, so let's run the calculations again for this new resistor value. 1.26 divided by 37.8 equals times 500.5, 16.6. So we've actually gone the other way just a bit. Alright, so as we can see on our chart, when we used a 22K resistor, we did the calculations, we came out with about 17 watts dissipation on all of our tubes. When we used a 34K, which is what it actually measured, and we came out with about a 16.5 watts, so we went down. We want to try to get it up a little bit closer to 20, maybe 21 maximum. So in order to do that, we need to actually drop this value down rather than go up. See, we're going the wrong way. So let's drop down here and do like a maybe a 10. That's where our decade box is going to come in handy. We're going to start over here with a 10K. Make sure our switch is in low mode. You definitely don't want to mess up on something like this and leave it on too long, especially when you're messing around with the bias. But we will throw the switch, and we're using the 10K. We can see right off the bat our plate voltage is down to 477, and that is on the left two tubes. So 477, and we're at 478, practically the same. And now we'll measure our voltage drops across the output transformer, primary. Voltage drop on the right hand set of tubes is 5.6 volts. Voltage drop on the left hand set of tubes, 5.99, so 6 volts. So 5.6 and 6. Alright, these are pretty whopping totals for the voltage drop, so I suspect a pretty whopping total altogether. So let's try it. 6 volts divided by our original 37.8 times 478. Yeah, look at that. 75.8 divided by 2, 38 watts per tube. So yeah, that's not good. So 10K is way too low, so we're gonna bump back up to about 15K. Let's check that out. Well, the 15K got us closer to where we needed to be, and one thing I will say about these is they are very consistent on the matching. 27.6 for both pair. Very, very close on matching, but this is still not quite where we need it to be. We need it to be somewhere between the 15K and the 22. So, okay, it turns out 20K is pretty much our Goldilocks number. That gets us fairly close to our 70% figure of 21 watts. Just enough below it to be a little on the safe side, but a little bit above the 17 watts where we started out. So this thing should have just a little bit more power, maybe a little bit more headroom. You probably won't notice it very much, but you may, especially on a Rhodes with, you know, if you're putting a Rhodes piano through it. But yeah, so there's that resistor replaced. Now let's get this thing all back together. One final inspection, and I think we'll be ready to test it out. Alright, that concludes our video presentation on this Fender Twin Reverb. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please hit the subscribe button below to receive future updates. And for now, y'all take care.